We have a definition of public value that looks at three different aspects. The first one is value to citizens. The second part is value to government itself in terms of its own efficiency, operation, cost optimizations, if you like. And the third one is what we call the Gartner political return, which is a combination of the ability of meeting your mission objectives, but also the ability of, if you like, being re-elected. So that the softer value to politicians of proving the link between, an investment and net spend, if you like, and the likelihood of being successful at next. They tend to do this, especially these days, in those parts of the world where the financial crisis, the recession have hit particularly hard. Now we look at government clients looking into investments pretty much like the private sector. Is this going to save us money? Full stop. I think that's wrong. That's wrong because, as I said, that is one component, and one component only of public value. You could actually take a decision, and let me take an example. Something that's happened a lot over the last couple of years in governments has been a consolidation of call centers. The more you consolidate call centers, the more you save money. That's pretty easy. Now, if you look at public value, you think about, well, what does it mean for certain services? Clearly, the more you consolidate, the less specialized those call centers are on certain kind of services. So people who consume those services will get a lower service level, a worse service than before. So in public service terms, in public value terms, you actually do well on efficiency because you become less expensive. You don't do very well on service levels. And when you look at the third aspect, political return, the more you consolidate, the less, the fewer public sector jobs you have. So in a sense, you're also creating a problem from the political return perspective. Now, I think this is not something that happens in the private sector. The private sector, you always have something that is more important than anything else. It could be the bottom line, it could be the top line, it could be to win market share. In government, you always have a combination of different aspects you need to take into account, both in the short term and in the long term. And my point is that public value is far more complex than, private return on investment. And that's why it's so difficult for governments to take the right or the wrong decision. Well, first of all, they have to realize that value has to be measured in terms of public value. Public value meaning what I said before, citizen, efficiency, and alignment with the agency or the ministry mission. Then they have to realize that only part of this can be measured quantitatively. So you can measure efficiency with quantitative measures like, headcounts, rather than number of transactions per headcount, rather than cost, whatever. When you look at citizen service, some elements can be measured. How long should somebody wait to get a reimbursement or to get a job? Some other aspects of citizen satisfaction cannot be measured. And the same applies when you look at the third aspect, which is alignment with your mission and political return. Some aspects can be measured. If, for instance, you have as part of your mission, I want to reduce crime by 25%, you probably can measure that. Well, when it comes to political return, the likelihood of being re-elected, well, certainly you can measure that after the election. How do you measure that before? So I think the more people realize in government, we have to measure with quantitative metrics as well as qualitative one, the better it is. What is important, I would say, is essential, is that they don't measure only one of those three aspects, but they measure them. I think it's important to relentlessly ask yourself the question, what is the value of doing this? I think the problem with technology in government is, especially when there was a lot of money around, a vendor would come and say, well, I have this new great product, tried, and people would actually use technology out of technology push from the market, basically. I think now that there is less money in many places, it's a good thing, because people have to ask themselves, is this technology really going to make a difference? Is it really going to make a difference in terms of value or just in terms of efficiency? So I think asking the question about the value of every single piece of technology is important. The other point which is important to realize is technology is only one component. A great technology could fail if the organizational context, if the process context, and the regulatory context is not the right one. I remember a boss of mine two jobs ago used to tell me, a fool with a tool is still a fool. I think the point is, it doesn't matter if the technology is good or bad, you really need to create and know you had the right context for that technology to go. I think their position has clearly grown in importance. Now, if you make a parallel between public and private, you say, okay, who should the CIO report to? Will probably be the Prime Minister or the Premier. Is that a good thing? I don't think it is. The problem in government is managing the budget. So the most powerful CIO positions are not those that report to the Prime Minister or the Premier or whatever. They are those that report to the Minister of Finance, to the Treasury, because those people can pull the strings of the purse. And that's what really makes the difference in government. You have to realize that in the private sector, an enterprise, be it a steel manufacturer, a retailer, a telecom company, is actually like a single corporation. Any government is like multiple corporations. You have transportation, you have social security, you have public safety, you have tax and revenues and so forth. How do you pull them together? Only money talks. So if the CIO reports to the Minister of Finance, he or she is likely to be more powerful than he is if he or she is in a staff position to the President. Australia actually, IT was dealt kind of independently, more reported to the Premier, back a few years, perhaps 4 or 5 years ago. Now they've actually become part of the Department of Finance, and you can clearly see the difference in them becoming more powerful around areas like shared services, consolidation. Now they're actually developing a data center consolidation and the cloud computing strategy, and the different agencies and departments are actually following that. And the same has happened in Europe, for instance. If you look at Denmark, some other places, France and so forth. So clearly money talks.